Alright, so Frank and Angie are together, living free, and reporting to you about the biggest tourist trap in Italy. Just in case you were planning on being a tourist and just hitting the same tourist circuit everybody else hits. Venice has decided that they're getting too many tourists and that they're ruining the city. And guess what they're gonna do about it? They're gonna fine people for using the benches. Watch out, Angie. Okay, it's a rumor, but they could do it. Now, does that sound like trying to curb tourism to you, or does that just sound like trying to get even more money out of the tourists? Ah, did I say that? I don't know. It seems to me that if I was looking for something to do, it wouldn't be waiting in lines and being around crowds. But, you know, to each his own. You know, it's an experience, right? So, the thing is, you know, I used to live in California, and I don't think I went to Universal Studios. No, wait, we went to Universal Studios, but not when I lived there.
Right.
So when I lived there, I didn't go there, but after I moved away and was away for years, I took my family to Universal Studios. You know, it's like the people that were born and raised on an island but don't know how to swim. You know, you take things for granted. Yeah, so some of these things, they may be rumors, but they have a way of coming true, and then for a while, and then they decide, well, maybe that's not such a good idea. But I don't know, what other ways would you really discourage tourists if that was really what you wanted to do? There's always a subset of locals that suffers from it, so I can...
Well, it's said that a lot of the locals,
well, they're being pushed out. They're moving because they can't no longer afford their own city. Which is what happens to every single one of these ram circuit cities. Yep, and so that's the news on the street. So am I the only one that finds it very curious that no matter what culture you end up in, the coins are always the color gold, or close to it, or they're trying to mimic the color gold, because it's not gold, so it isn't going to be the color gold, but they're trying to get as close as possible. Am I the only one that thinks that's kind of a curious idea here? Curious thing?
I think they look like those chocolate candy, the chocolates.
Yeah. So that's how much gold it takes to get to the beach. Dopo di lei. And looks like we've got a full boat. you can see the ocean right there at the front of the bus. There, can you see it now?
Sí,
Yep, there it is. So it's the last day of June. That's the temperature. It's 10:40 at 10:40 a.m. So what is it? 32 degrees, I think it said, centigrade. But you guys are going to find this interesting. Some of you will. I'm negotiating here. I'm actually negotiating here the same or more than in Ecuador, Latin America, because you know there's no Ram magazine follower. The curse of the Ram magazine follower, where the locals won't negotiate with you because they think you're one of them. And so it's interesting because you're in Italy now. It you know, because people say first world, third world, whatever, you know, silly labels like that. But it'd be interesting though, because we are in the south, to figure out, you know, what the difference is between the south and the north as far as the negotiating. Yeah, I was looking at some men's bathing suits on the rack, and they were like 10 euro, and I said, well, you know, do you have one cheaper? And she said, well, how much? She said, this one's 7, and I said, no, cheaper. She said, oh, cheaper. She just, listen, before you think, oh, well, you're just getting what you're paying for. It was on the same rack. It looked like the others. And she gave it to me for 5, so, buongiorno. Some things will never end, doesn't matter where you go. If you got a camera in your hand, you're going to attract attention. You know what's really interesting about this? It's not that we're here and we still pay $340 a month for a furnished 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It's that it still smells like cappuccino, even at the beach. Speaking of the rent, it just reminds me, and you know, it always comes up, doesn't it? Because the Rams do what? They tell you that what the cheapest, what do? The cheapest place to retire on a budget, they say, right? And who are they pitching it to? And we wrote an article, this was years ago, that talked about the Pied Piper syndrome, you know, where people just follow everyone, whatever's on the internet list. And you know, I don't talk that way to condemn or blame or anything. You guys need to understand, I want to explain to you. I talk that way to paint a picture quickly. That's the only purpose in using that kind of verbiage. You know, I mean, you can call it following the crowds or mainstream, or you could even call it just tourism. Isn't that what tourism is? I mean, I have some friends that just went to visit Italy, and they just went to where everybody goes. And why? There's so many. Because that's the thing to do. Because, hey, you know, if you go to Italy for 1 week, you've got to go to Venice, right? Well, I mean, look, I'm not saying you shouldn't.
Well, actually, the tourism is becoming detrimental to the locals in Venice.
I think that was a long time ago. There's a couple sailboats out there today.
You know what? This is really good snorkeling water.
Yeah. So we're gonna pretend that we have a GoPro.
But we don't. That kind of stuff. Where'd that rock go?
And you see the little fish? There's not very many of them. Look like sticks. No, that is a stick. There's the fish.
What happened to that big rock we were by?
Well, there's one here and there's one there.
I like these 2 rocks right here. I can stand up on them. Man, I cannot believe the clearness of the water out here. It's unbelievable. I do see fish down there. There's fish. Do you see it? You see that fish? Look. Oh my gosh. There are fish all over in here. Oh, Frank, come look at all the fish right here. Come on. biggest mistakes when we moved abroad? What are those, Frank?
You mean like if people say, I used to ask this to people, it's like if you had to do it over again, what would you do differently? And the idea is that you don't want to make the same mistakes, so you want to ask them that, you know. So it's like, well, what would I do differently? Well, all the things we already talked about, having more flexibility and having more options available, and not caging yourself into a place just because, you know, supposedly the place that you know, you're going to be able to live on a certain amount. I mean, I see people do this all the time. They say, well, you know, I'm going to go to Ecuador and I'm going to live on this much. Well, it turns out that, guess what? You can live on this much in a lot of places, you know, if you make a study of it and if you, you know, make an effort of it, you know. So when you've designed your life for a long time, it's like a habit. It's like you wake up and you breathe and you brush your teeth. You don't think about it. You know, if you have to start thinking about it and you start realizing, you know what, there actually is a way that I do things. There's a prescribed way that I do things, and I just become such a ingrained way of doing things that you just didn't give it any thought. But if somebody was to ask you, well, I want to do what you do, or I want to accomplish what you accomplish and such, and you know, you have to go back and say, okay, well, let's see, I do things this way and this way and this way, and this produces this result, you know. And the result is that I'm here. I'm doing it. Reporting from Italy. Thanks for watching. You know what to do. Check out the links below. Got some goodies for you. Peanut butter and jelly. Check it out.